Hello and welcome everybody, I'm Barbarian, and this is the 9th Dev Diary for Crusader Kings 3, the first one in 2020, and now every week on Tuesday there will be a new Dev Diary and a new Dev Diary video, so, definitely check those out whenever they come out on Tuesday again. With that being said, let's jump into this one straight up, because this one is an intense one. What I mean by that is that it's not very long, but it kind of opened my eyes, at least on a, personal level. I don't know if I really can convey it, but it opened my eyes as to why they only chose 3 traits, roughly, for every character. So if you don't know this yet, in CK2, of course, we all know it, we all love it. Everyone has an infinite amount of traits. There is no real limit to character traits. Now, there is a limit to lifestyle traits, but more on that later. But character traits, as such, go unlimited. People have plenty of them. Let me just take a look at the last ruler of this, Gardariki. I think he had 1 million traits. Oh yeah, actually not that many. Look at these people. All of these people have a very large amount of traits, and these large amount of traits are something that CK3 will not have, because CK3 only has, and yes, this is true, a system where you are supposed to have about 3 traits. So for example, you will just be kind, chaste, and maybe gluttonous, right? There's no in between. There's no like 1 million of them. There's only 3. And I was amongst the people, and I think there were plenty of people that were like, hey, this sounds whack. This doesn't sound good. How fleshed out will my character be with only 3 character traits? But I actually believe that this was a good choice when we look at what they are doing here when it comes to the topic of which other traits, which other attributes can your character have to be a unique character. Because when we look at that, especially with this Dev Diary in mind, I think we find that Crusader Kings 3 is much more in-depth. Now, with that being said, let's jump right in. The lifestyles of CK3 have very little in common with those in CK2. They are much more interactive, and they are also proper skill trees. Now, I've always said, that at the end of the day, CK2 is a roleplay game masked as a map game. And I do think that is true, and I think that is a good thing because it gives you so much replayability. And I like that they are really kneeling into that. They are really going deep down into the idea, hey, let's make this such a roleplay game where you still have the map, but everything that you do matters because your character does it, not because your country does it, not because your culture, your religion, or whatever does it, but because your character does it. Now, with that being said, let's jump into the meat here. What they did is essentially they used the same 5 categories: diplomacy, martial stewardship, intrigue, and learning that they already used in the Crusader Kings 2 game, but they are giving each of these categories 3 focuses that you can pick. So, for example, and we can see that down here, you have the medicine focus, the scholarship focus, and theology focus for learning, all of which give you different bonuses. For example, just +1 learning attribute, but a small boost to health, +3 learning, but nothing else, and then +1 and +1.0 piety per month. Now, all of those also give you learning experience, meaning that you gain experience in this section of the focus trees. You're not, someone that is stuck in your focus trees. For example, this man is educated in intrigue. You can see that he has a fairly low education. I think actually the worst one that he could have gotten, which is why he only gets 10% more experience. But you are not, kind of burdened to stay within that path all your life. You can definitely spec into something else. You can go into stewardship instead if at the time you need it. Very, very similar to how I, for example, have the education of a dutiful cleric, but I can go intrigue with my character. I could also go rulership. I could do any of those, whatever is, appropriate at the time. But whatever and let's just jump back in here for a second, whatever you can do with King Uhtred the Boldy, for example, when it comes to his lifestyle choices is very, very, very random. So, for example, if I were to pick seduction, I could do some things, but eventually, if I wanted the lifestyle trait Master Seducer, it is random. I do not actually have the chance to, properly choose there. It just happens or it doesn't happen. I just get an event at some point and that's it. I don't have a choice, no matter what I want this character to be, no matter how much I push for something to happen. I also can't guarantee that I will become a hunter or an administrator or, whatever else is, an architect or, for example, scholarship is pretty much guaranteed, but that is also, that's sad, isn't it? It's guaranteed. If you pick this and just go down the road of the scholarship observatory events, you will always get it. Now, all of this stuff is no longer something that is in CK3 because they gave you something where you can consciously choose where you want to invest the, kind of experience that you gain from living a certain way, for example, as a scholar, where you can invest that and where you want to invest that. So you now have more choice. While randomness, is kind of gone, it doesn't guarantee anything, meaning we are now in the golden middle path there. Now, with that being said, what does this mean? After you've picked a focus, you will start gaining experience and can start unlocking perks. Now, characters will not always... Okay, let me begin again. Now, characters will not usually live long enough to unlock every perk. You will have to choose which path to go down, and you will unlock a new perk every few years. Perks are unlocked by spending experience, which is gained both passively, so, you know, you just being on the focus, and actively through choices and lifestyle events. Again, they give you the choice. They cut out the randomness of, for example, sometimes when you get older, you will just start getting events that are like, man, the world's really nasty, I don't like being patient anymore, and you will just lose the patient trait. Sometimes, CK2 does that, and it is frustrating, because the player has no opportunity to say yes or no to that whatsoever, no choice in any way. Now in CK3 they changed that, not just with the character traits, but also with the lifestyle traits. You are the one that leads to a lifestyle, if you have the opportunity in your life, of course, but you are the one that actually goes there. So with that being said, I like the principle of this already, because it means that there is way less randomness when it comes to acquiring a certain life and where you want to be, but you have to work hard for it. With that being said, going down the right path will unlock special modifiers, decisions, CBs, and even schemes. It is very interesting, and I think we should take a look at this one. Nope, not at you. At you, we should take a look at this one. This is the lifestyle focus tree section for diplomacy. As you can see here, you have 3 focuses. You have foreign affair focus, one can never have too many friends, near or far. We have majesty focus, regality flows from ritual, tradition, and glory. And we have the family focus. So, diplomat is what corresponds to foreign affairs focus, August is what responds to majesty, and then family first is, of course, the family focus. So with that being said, if you pick this focus, you get experience in the entire diplomacy tree, which you can then, you know, invest over here. Every tree has 9 spots that you can fill, and eventually, you know, of course, you could just stick to this, or you could switch between diplomacy and intrigue and make a character that is kind of balanced. Now, with that being said, as you can see here, you pick whatever you want to pick, and I think there's some interesting ones in here. The August one, for example, is the crowning achievement of the August path, and will give you lifestyle give you lifestyle trait. So you can, if you push hard enough, go for the lifestyle trait there. You can also just simply not do it. Now, the interesting part about that is, in my opinion, that you can indeed go foreign affairs focus and then just invest in family first. Nothing, you know, that is combining the two, but I like it. I like the idea where you can just, hey, it's just, you know, interacting with other people in general, right? You can see here as well, because of your diplomacy education, you gain 30% more experience in this lifestyle. So whatever, you know, level your education is, the better it will go. With that being said, the way it is handled here, where you form your character based on his actual experiences in the world and not just on a trait that he got assigned as a child, and then you have to be kind to everyone 24/7, I think that is a wonderful idea. You don't need a proper trait, you know, for example, a million traits that identify who you are, which you then have to use very 2D like. You just have to take these skill points, because they also explain who he is. How good of a ruler is he? How experienced is he? How good of a diplomat is he? Is he, you know, a bit more prone to negotiations, or does he go for ducal conquests here, which, by the way, clearly indicates that he can unlock ducal conquests via this one. But with that being said, I think this one is called flexible truces. Oh, shorter truce timers. People will love this partially. Now, what I will say is, I like the idea of this. I like that it gives you more opportunities to live your life differently, because it gives you more options, and I like the idea a lot that it defines you without giving you a trait. So for example, if I took defensive negotiations, of course I would get a benefit from it, but I would also say, hey, this character is someone that definitely will always say, I will sit down at the table with my enemy just to bind him down, just so that he's busy, and in the meantime I will, you know, plan my defenses. This is at least how I understand that, but no matter what it means, I think the idea of that, the idea that you define yourself via your skill points and not just via your traits, is excellent, because it takes a lot of 2D out of the world in Crusader Kings. Now, with that being said, and we've already had the case here similar, so some schemes unlocking. I actually got to take a look here. This, for example, King Uhtred belongs to a tyrannical bloodline, is one of the possible triggers for me to be allowed to do this. So you already had some stuff, some decisions, some scheming, some wars locked behind bloodlines, behind character traits, and so on and so forth. So diving deeper into that, cool idea, at least as far as I'm concerned. The final perk in each tree always gives you a trait, which is very powerful. Think the Master Seducer trait in CK2, nicely rounding them off. If you live long enough, you'll see yourself accumulate a few of these. That is huge. CK2 only has you ever, at any point, have one lifestyle trait. That is just what your character is at that point. But of course, characters aren't that 2D. Characters aren't just a mystic or something, you know, they might also be a hunter. They might also be chivalrous, you know, they might be family oriented. They might be I don't even know what the hell that is. This is a treasure hunter, maybe? A feast holder? You know, a carouser? My bad, I had to mute myself there for a second. A spy, you know, an intriguant. He could be a buff man who's trying to work out and make it with sis. He could be a treasure hoarder. He could be a master seducer. Of course, an architect. A doctor, I want to say. What about this stuff? A theologian? A scholar? Both of these look like scholar. I don't actually know. Maybe just an author. What about a poet? Of course, yeah. The August here. This looks like he might be a hedonist. I'm not sure. This one looks like hedonist. Maybe this is alchemy. Might be. Friendship or, well, diplomacy, one of the two, master diplomat maybe. You know, there is so many traits that you can now get at the same time that will define your character much more nuanced than just a character trait. Imagine this. I could be an architect. Now, the way I conduct my architect business and the way I've always done it throughout my life will define who I am. It is not just the kind trait. It is not just the cruel trait. There are nuanced, great decisions. Sometimes I will be kind to people. Sometimes I may be cruel. Whatever, you know, I feel towards those people. In CK2, even if you have a rival, because that rival literally killed your entire family, if you act against kind, it kind of doesn't make sense, right? But unless kindness is truly a defining kind of thing for your character, you will not have that trait in CK3. And I think that is good, because you can still roleplay to be kind. At least in whatever way it makes sense for you. So I feel like having more lifestyle traits and fewer character traits is a big benefit. I actually like the idea. Now that I know that you can have multiple ones and that they are achievable by doing it on purpose instead of just random in CK2, I'm a huge fan of it. Now, that being said, depending on the education you get, you will have an affinity for a certain lifestyle. The education ranks directly correspond to a percentage increase in experience gained. Yeah, there you go. So 10% to 40%, that's the number. And when a character becomes landed, they will select a focus and unlock perks based on their age. The older they are, the more perks they will have unlocked. They will select an appropriate lifestyle based on their education, making it even more important to manage your children's education carefully, and perks based on their personality and traits. Now, here's something that I'm not sure about. I know that a lot of you are going to like this, primarily because I know there are a lot of power gamers, and there's nothing wrong, just for the record, don't even get it started in the comments, there's nothing wrong with being a power gamer, it's perfectly fine. I personally, I'm not sure that I'm ever going to use this, but they have a mechanic. If you get a character that, you know, has traits, has perks that you don't like, where you didn't want to spec into as, you know, a player, then you can simply reset them. Do not worry though, if you're not satisfied with the hand you're dealt, you can choose to reset all perks within that lifestyle once per lifetime. Though this will incur a massive amount of stress. Again, more on this in a later dev diary. Now, there is a cost, of course, the stress cost, and stress can drive you insane. It can make you into an absolute lunatic, because that is what happens to people that are stressed out. They have a mental breakdown, but it is an option that you can pick if you are simply unhappy with how a person lived their life until you took them over. Not sure how, you know, whether I will ever use them, but I will tell you straight up, I like that, because they keep the door open for people that aren't as invested in roleplay, that aren't as invested in, you know, speccing into a roleplay, into a tree, into a, you know, perk tree. I personally love the idea of the perk trees. I've seen some strange criticism of it, and I want to approach it directly because I feel like the next step after this one were perk trees. Look at this stuff. Everything we get here are practically perks. All of the modifiers that you can pick up are practically perks. It's just that we never actually define them as perks. They're all random in CK2. Everything we do can lead to random perks that we can hope for, but can never actually work for. In CK3, they give the player more choice. They give the player hard work. They give them a job that they have to do instead of just, you know, picking, for example, business and then just waiting for the events. In CK3, they give the player choice and work for a goal. And I think that is a huge step into the right direction. What they are doing is making this RPG Masters and map game into even more of an RPG while keeping the map game portions of it as big as they were beforehand. I think this is the right choice. And I really like this dev diary because of it. It opened my eyes personally. I was very miffed when it came to the character traits being limited. But with this in combination, I think we are going to be looking at the most sincerely 3D characters. I mean, because he's 3D, you get it? I think we're going to be looking at the most detailed characters that we have ever seen in a map game. And I'm very excited for that. Now, with that being said, let me know what you think in the comments. I want to thank the members of this channel for, you know, supporting this channel directly. First, the Barons, Aaron, Stefan, the Richest T and Snywolf. Then the Counts, Emma Mamello, I am Deadpool, Suspicious Duck, and Kiemelik 2. And last but not least, the wonderful Dukes, Nathan, Herman, Knight of Squires, Kenneth, Lexo, Benedict, Roboman, My Dad Left Me at Arby's, and the absolute legend, Eric. If you also want to support the channel, then check out the join button right underneath the video where you can find the membership section of the channel. Either way, thank you so much for tuning in. Let me know what you think about this, about today's CK3 dev diary. Later, alligator.